So I started this organization called Turning Point USA when I was 18 years old. Took a very unusual path to it. I decided to start this movement instead of going to college. I saw something brewing in the States that I felt more instinctual than anything else, that there was a countercultural kind of revolution that needed to happen on our college and high school campuses. And I saw it through social media, and I saw it through my local high school community, that my generation was being so inundated with cultural Marxism and also economic Marxism, but even worse, it was the cultural side of it, and that my generation was yearning for a different perspective and political viewpoint, or at least ideological diversity and the capacity to have your viewpoints challenged. So it started as kind of a whim, has ended up to be a quite large success. When I started this organization, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no political connections and no money. So that was a good start.
So you started thinking about this when you were in high school, obviously.
That's correct.
Okay, so what happened in high school, and how did you come to these conclusions, and what motivated you?
Always loved history, economics, and of the more conservative persuasion. My lifelong ambition, I wanted to go to the United States Military Academy at West Point, which is a very difficult school to get into in the States. So I got my congressional nomination, which is the first of a two-step process, and then I ended up being waitlisted and denied on my senior year of high school, which totally shattered me, but ended up being the best thing that never happened to me, because it really made me reflect on who I was and what I wanted to do. And what I realized is my motivation to go to the military academy was that I was a patriot and I loved my country and I wanted to serve it in some capacity, but I felt like the West was under attack, and I still feel that to this day.
So why do you think you developed a sense of patriotism in say, junior high and high school when that is increasingly lacking, I would say, but not only lacking, but seriously criticized? What made you different?
It's difficult to say. I definitely love my country based on my upbringing, but probably
what about your upbringing?
My parents are generally center-right people, and we were always taught, patriotic values from a young age, read the Constitution, around the dinner table, things like that. But I'm disagreeable by nature, and so when my teachers would go out of their way to make anti-American or anti-patriotic statements, it only made me reaffirm my own beliefs and dig in deeper and want to challenge that even more, which I then sought out the great thinkers of the American founding, the Federalist Papers, the U.S. Constitution, and down that rabbit hole I went to the great thinkers that created Western civilization, both intentionally and unintentionally, whether it be Aristotle and all the great, enlightened, thousands of years of writings that the founding fathers drew inspiration from.
And did you do that on your own?
That's
in high
correct.
School?
It was autodidactic, so it was self-taught, in middle school as well. But it was driven by this inspiration of, I wanted to be able to effectively articulate my beliefs and values and ideas to a core of teachers that felt as if they had to indoctrinate me to hate America, hate free enterprise, and hate free speech. So I grew up in a rather generally liberal area, the northwest suburbs of Chicago, and the teacher community, for the most part, they were not trying to allow a free flow of ideas. They were trying to impose a specific doctrine upon their students. And being a disagreeable contrarian by nature, I would always debate them, and I would find satisfaction in proving them wrong, as as wrong or right as that might be. That's just who I was. That's who I always have been. And then by doing so, I sought out these books, I sought out these ideas, and I found Milton Friedman, and I found individuals that articulated what I knew to be true, and I only went down that path even further.
So what did that do for your social life, just out of curiosity? How are your peers reacting to this?
So it's quite interesting you mentioned that. Throughout high school, I was heavily involved in football and basketball, and a generally well-liked individual. Ever since my graduation of high school and my entrance into political and social activism, the hostility towards from my high school community towards me has been extreme. And I'm not trying to play a victim. I'm fine with it. I really, those people were never my friends. They just pretended to be them, to be as such. But it's amazing to me that you just have a different viewpoint on how the world should work, that people on the left will immediately ostracize you and categorize you differently. And I always say, I'm a conservative. I don't look at people that are on the left any differently than I did. I look at who they are as a character and as a person, and the politics are just layered on top of that. The left is completely different. Is if you disagree with them, that's who you become. And I think that's one of the most cancerous and divisive aspects of modern political culture today, is that, especially my generation, if you dare not be a leftist or dare not be a liberal, then you're somehow less human, or you're somehow less acceptable to them. or you're immediately intolerant or racist or bigoted or homophobic, which of course is untrue, but it's almost as if they view you as a subspecies of them, which I'm experiencing every day, and some of the categorizations thrown towards you, it seems that in popular culture that remains consistent as well.
So tell me about your organization. Tell me its scope now and what
Sure.
you've been doing, and then we can talk about how you built it.
Of course. So we're on 1,300 college and high school campuses across the states. We have 115 people on full-time staff, and last year we raised $10.5 million with 25,000 active donors, and some big ones and some small ones with some of the largest, most successful American business people that have been investing in us. And I just started it from nothing. I travel 340 days a year and meeting with investors and business people and entrepreneurs that are worried that America's in a grave decline, and I'm able to present them with a strategy and a plan and a vision that can help turn that around, no pun intended. Organization's called Turning Point USA. And so we host the nation's largest annual gathering of young conservatives. We'll have 5,000 students there this upcoming December, of which you're the most requested speaker, off the charts, I might add. And the scope of the organization is dramatic and immense. We have a Young Women's Leadership Summit in June. We'll have 1,200 young ladies from all 50 states attend.
When is that?
That's in June in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. And so we'll host over 100 events a year off campus with over 250 student activists and leaders that we train towards what I like to call more principle-based activism, things that created the West: free speech, dialogue, free enterprise, private property rights, natural rights, really diving into the deep ideas, not this sort of social justice leftist activism that is taught from our lecture halls. So the scope of the organization has really grown dramatically. We're on a $15 million budget this year, and it's been quite an experience and a blessing, to say the least. Right place, right time, with a great group of people.
And how many campuses now?
1,300 college and high school. Chapter development, it's quite interesting. We have seen an explosion of high school interest and chapter development over the last couple of years, especially because the activism that is so prevalent in our colleges has now seeped down into our high schools. And so students that are finding my videos or finding Dave Rubin or Ben Shapiro, Dennis Prager, or your content, they're now 14, 15, and 16, and they seek out that content because they have to if they want to be able to defend their beliefs. Because it used to be that college used to be the only place that these ideas were really, not the only place, I should say, but the main focus of the left was colleges. No more. I mean, they are teaching the beginning stages of postmodernism as early as freshman years in high school, where there is no such thing as absolute truth.
Or in Ontario as early as grade 1.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
In Ontario, the Elementary Teachers Association, that's not quite the right name, maybe it's Ontario Teachers Federation, I can't remember at the moment, but they've put together a social justice curriculum from grade 1 to grade 8, which even bends the study of literature itself in a social justice direction. So they're so shameless that they're willing to bend art to the purposes of political propaganda.
It's stunning.
It's quite remarkable. So what do you expect from the high school chapters? What is it that they're doing that you think is good and useful? So
it's a different strategy and it's a different implementation that our staff goes about when they deal with high school students. The number one thing with high school students, the high school chapters that we deal with, is trying to make it culturally acceptable to believe these conservative ideas. So even if they meet weekly and bring in a guest speaker of a local political nature, or they watch a video, it's much more of a camaraderie building activity in high school than in college. And I say that because the mindset of being in high school is quite different. In college, you're entering into kind of that rugged independence. I want to rebel or conform to my parents' ideology. In high school, you are still very much anchored to your local and cultural institutions, your high school football team, your basketball team, and so. But
your peers.
That's exactly right. Whereas college, by the dynamic of the geography of college, you try to break out of that. But we try to hold the high school chapters, to a specific standard of at least meeting weekly, trying to go to some of our big national events, hosting guest speakers, debates, and lectures. So a great example is in the States, there was that horrific shooting down in Parkland High School. I'm actually going down to MSD, the school where the shooting took place. I'm going to give a speech on the Second Amendment and natural rights. They're not allowing me on campus, but I'm doing it right across the street. So that's one of the groups we have.
When are you doing that?
Tuesday, coming up this Tuesday.
Oh, yeah.
They say it's highly controversial, which I don't consider it to be. The Second Amendment is, some would say, a controversial thing, people that aren't in the States. But
the First Amendment is controversial.
That's exactly,
now too,
that's what I was going to say, is that the idea of natural rights shouldn't offend anyone, but unfortunately it does. So that's one example of an event that I have on a high school kind of arena that I'm doing coming up.
Okay, and then at the university level, you said 1,500, 1,300?
So 1,300 is the number high school and college combined.
Right,
so that's
right.
divided about 900 college, 400 high school.
And do you have any estimate for total membership?
It's difficult to say. So to give you an idea, we had 3,000 students attend our annual meeting last year, and we had over 14,000 applications. And so membership is well beyond that. But it's definitely in the tens of thousands. Our total data list is in the hundreds of thousands. We have over 1 million Facebook followers. I have 500,000 followers on Twitter. Membership's a very difficult thing to pinpoint. We don't want
to define.
That's correct. We don't want to be like the AARP where you have 7 million people on your mailing list and you pretend they're all members. But we're very much more into the quality of leadership than the quantity of leaders. So that's the one thing. I'd rather have 100 dedicated, principled, movement-driven student leaders than 1,000 that are just kind of lackluster and are there for the free pizza or pop.
And what are you hoping for from the university chapters?
So that's much more disruptive. We want to challenge the status quo head-on and do everything we possibly can to try to change the trajectory of our generation. And so our organization offers that in a lot of different ways, whether it be offering guest speakers on campus, such as myself. So this last week, I spoke at the University of California, Berkeley, and University of California, Los Angeles, UC Berkeley and UCLA, one day after the other. We had a packed house, every seat filled. We had a lot of protesters, a lot of opposition. Hundreds of thousands of people watched the live stream. The live stream will hit 1 million people on kind of retroactive views happening right now throughout this next week.
And you said you were there with Ruben.
That's correct. I was there with Dave Rubin and Candace Owens. So Candace Owens works for us. She's our communications director.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
okay.
Candace is a superstar. In fact, she just got a nice shout out from Kanye West saying, I love the way Candace Owens thinks, which honestly is it's hard to even put into words the significance of a rap artist like him singling out a conservative-minded pundit like Candace. I think there's a seismic shift happening in America in the black community that is going to be a generational ideological civil war, in the words of Candace Owens. So we went to UC Berkeley and UCLA, and what's interesting about Candace Owens is she uses identity politics against the left. And so truth should be colorblind, and any individual should be able to say what they want to say despite their skin color or their gender. Unfortunately, that's not the case on a college campus. So I'll say something, it might trigger the audience, but Candace will say that, and they're perfectly okay with that. And that shouldn't be the case. But that just shows how...
But it must be harder for her, on the contrary side, to be conservative and black.
Without a doubt. And the societal punishment she receives for that is horrific.
Like what? What's happening?
Well, the things that the words they call her, I wouldn't even repeat on camera, but, the nice ones are Uncle Tom,
right?
Coon, things of that nature. She has a very, just the harsh backlash for what she believes and what she feels, because how dare she stray away from the ideological monopoly that the left has on the black community. And for those people that don't know, that might be watching internationally, the Democrat Party receives 96 to 97% of all black voters in America, despite the Democrat policies having the worst impact on the black community. And so Candace is trying to wake up that community, and so we're happy to have her as our communications director and help enhance her vision to try to at least get people to think differently. So.
Yeah, I'm going to talk to Warren Farrell later today, and he just wrote a book called The Boy Crisis, and in there he talks a fair bit about the pernicious effect of fatherlessness, and that's something that I'm very interested in. In Ontario, we have, as part of standard political policy, that all families are equal, and the idea there is that respect should be given to familial units regardless of their structure. And there's something to be said for that, because people have to struggle through life the best they can, whether they're single parents or regardless of how they put their family together. But the empirical data on the catastrophe of fatherlessness is extraordinarily solid and deep, and it seems to be something, in principle, that's a particular plague for the black community.
That's correct.
And I guess I'm wondering too, like with the conservative approach to that, have you guys focused on the problems of fatherlessness and